Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today I'm going to answer a question from a viewer about something which clearly I am quite interested in because the items that I have in my possession are here displayed on the table, but all will become clear as we go on. Now, the reader, or the viewer rather, who's written to me today is called Bruce. Bruce hails from Toronto, but currently lives in Mexico. And he's asked me this question. I recently purchased a navy blazer, the little black dress of the man's wardrobe, as you like to call it. And as an aside, Bruce, I absolutely do. I think the navy blazer is an essential in every man's wardrobe for obvious reasons. And Bruce continues, I have a blazer badge from a paramilitary organisation to which I used to belong and to which I was associated for 12 years. I still associate with many of my old comrades. Is it chap to have the crest, blazer badge, mounted on the breast pocket for everyday use? Or should those type of badges be avoided generally and be displayed only on jackets when with comrades? If you feel it is okay to mount the blazer badge, the crest, would you then limit other such adornments such as lapel pins, pocket squares and boutonnieres? The badge which I have is related to the uniform staff of Fort York in Toronto, where I was part of the ceremonial guard team. Well, sir, an excellent question, and one which is an interesting and fascinating delve back into the history of something which we kind of take for granted, particularly here in the UK, because the blazer badge is something you will see fairly often at certain times of the year. Now, looking back into the history of badges on blazers, we can go right back to the roots, which is in the 19th century, where you will have seen blazer badges which were particularly associated to things like the British public school system, British military regiments and sporting clubs. They were definitely where it all began, I think. Originally, the badge was worn simply to denote the wearer's association or membership with a certain body or organisation. If we spin that to the public school element, places like Eton and Harrow, which are really famous public schools here in the UK, they would have had their students wearing blazer badges because it showed their association with the school, but it also, the badge itself, they would have featured rich embroidery which spoke to the heritage and the traditions of that school. They would probably have had the motto of the school as well, either in Latin or English. So it really built that sense of camaraderie in the organisation. Military influence has played a big part in the evolution of the blazer badge. Regiments have long adopted a sort of stylised version, typically of their cap badge, to be worn on the blazer as a blazer badge, so that when veterans from the same regiments or organisations would have seen each other, they would have been able to identify, they were brothers from the same arm of service. And this is still very common today. I mean, perhaps most commonly seen at remembrance parades here in the UK. Every November, you will see, all the veterans heading out on that Sunday morning to pay homage to their fallen colleagues and proudly wearing their blazers with the blazer badge. Sports clubs, similar sort of thing. Sports clubs, obviously, often after the sport, there are social gatherings, and clubs would typically wear a blazer, not necessarily a navy blazer. Many will be brightly coloured with piping and things like that to denote the various clubs they're members of, but often a blazer badge would be incorporated as well, again featuring the embroidery and emblems from that club. And quite often with sports clubs, they would even have achievements on there. So if you were maybe the team captain, and we're talking about the traditional sports generally, we're talking about rugby, football, golf, rowing, things like that, your pretty fancy ones, cricket particularly, they would have the blazer badge along there. Now, in modern sartorial style, the contemporary sartorial world, the blazer badge has morphed really from being something which was functional and necessary. So functionally, it was there to show that you were a member of a body or organisation. Now, we see them being incorporated merely as a fashion statement. And some of the big fashion houses like Gucci and Ralph Lauren, they absolutely have blazer badges incorporated into the general lines of clothing that they have. So nothing special, not sporting related, merely a fashion statement to denote, in a way, it's kind of getting your logo out there on the sly, because you're showing the world you're wearing a Ralph Lauren blazer because it's written loud and proud on there. So it's a little bit more a stylish way of demonstrating that logo. Social signs, you know, what does it mean if you wear a blazer badge in this day and age? Well, perhaps it's less common. Even in the UK, which is probably one of the more sartorial countries in the world, the blazer badge is less common now than it will have ever been in the past. So we are at the peak of casualisation in the way that people dress, and as a consequence of that, less gentlemen wear blazers, as a matter of course, so you will see less blazer badges. And of course there are less veterans that at any time you will have seen in the past, because our armed forces have shrunk to a smaller size than they've been since the Napoleonic Wars, by all accounts, which may change soon, but still, you know, in the sartorial world, I think now we see less blazer badges typically. So, my journey with the blazer badge, before I give you the answer which Bruce seeks. So my journey begins at age 11, but a child, when I went to Aberdare Boys Comprehensive School in South Wales. And the school had a uniform, which by modern standards I guess was quite strict, and it incorporated a black blazer, but we also had the school badge which was to be worn on that blazer. And you know, as you can imagine, being a Welsh school, there was a dragon on there and there was a book on there as well, because it was a school, a place of learning. And I recall some sort of Latin motto. It slips my mind, it was a long time ago and it wasn't the happiest period of my life, but that's when I started wearing the blazer and in the badge. As I grew up in my community, there were a lot of people who were military veterans, my father included. My family going back to the Boer War have all served the country. So when I went to the remembrance parades as a young child, as a cadet, a military cadet, an air cadet, I remember looking around and seeing all these gentlemen, a sea of well-dressed men, some wearing their berets, but certainly most wearing a blazer and proudly displaying their blazer badge, indicating their affiliation with their former regiment or arm of service. And that's where, you know, it went. Myself, I ended up joining the military, and where is my badge? This here is the blazer badge of the Royal Air Force, so the arm of service which I served in. Never actually wore it on a blazer, but as you can see, it's displayed in my office these days on this wood backing, which is just for display purposes. But actually, they are a minor work of art. If you look at a blazer badge, certainly a British military one, and this one here is my father's military regiment, the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. I gave this to him a while ago, and he displays it in his lounge. But as you can see, they are made of gold wire, lots of colour, and they are very attractive items within themselves. Not terribly expensive. A typical blazer badge can be anything from 25 to 40 pounds. So when you add it to an outfit, it's a small investment, but it can in fact have an enormous amount of importance and significance to the wearer and the people who will look upon you wearing your blazer badge. So although I never actually wore a blazer badge myself, because of my military affiliation, many years later, and of course you can, you know, this is a military veterans blazer badge here, and here is a blazer badge relating to one of the charities, the SAFA, the Armed Forces charity, which I've volunteered for and worked for periodically over the years, and I have worn this on blazers in the past, but now I no longer do quite so much for them, so it's now on a wooden display case. But many years later, I discovered the true power of the blazer badge. So, I'll tell you the story. 2012, I was in the process of setting up, from scratch, a small little charity with the help of many other people who all were pivotal and played a part in that charitable endeavour. But I got to thinking, how does a small charity with no money at all, whose principal purpose is interacting with the public, gain greater recognition and how can we improve our performance in networking situations? So I decided to set about a bit of, very, very basic marketing. Now, the first thing I did, one of the members of the charity, the trustee, had a family member who was an aspiring designer. I think she was in design college, and we paid her £50 for her to design a small logo for our charity, and in a very simple one. It was an oak leaf on a magenta coloured background, and as you can see, our first purchase was this small lapel pin, which we wore, all members of the charity wore, and it became a valuable and useful tool for us. Now, the next thing I did was to commission a charitable tie for all of the male members of the charity. So I actually I went a bit cheap, I'll be honest, I regret it now, but of course I commissioned a Chinese company through AliExpress, I think it was, to make, I think it was a batch of 50 ties for us. Now, the tie I'm wearing now is that tie. These are silk ties. And the colours all have relevance to our charity. Each colour has a meaning. There is dark blue, there is magenta, and there is silver. So that was our charitable colours. I think they cost £2.50 per tie if you ordered over 25. So it was a very cheap way of marketing. Everybody, we gave people we encountered a tie, and they found it as if it was a wonderful gift, although people rarely wear ties these days. But for us, it was this, common thing that we could all do to look the same and wear the badge. I went a step further, and the badge which we had commissioned, I then had commissioned into a blazer badge. Now, I sent the design off to a company, and it cost £25 per badge, so incredibly modestly priced in reality. And I'm wearing it now, as you can see, on my blazer today. And here is a larger version of it, which we used for marketing purposes. And as you can see, it is an exact scaling up, but in very beautiful form, of the lapel badge which we had. Now, I can tell you, this was one of the best investments I ever made, because from that point on, I bought myself a blazer. I went to Marks and Spencer's. I think I paid about £50 for this blazer in the sale. It's a woolen blazer. I got the badge sewn on. My good old wife sewed it on for me. I'm not so good with the needle and thread on the more intricate things. And from that point on, every time that I went to a networking event, a social event, or where I was representing the charity in a public environment, I wore this blazer with the badge. And I can tell you now, without a doubt, not one occasion went by where people didn't ask me about the badge, make reference to it, initiate a chain of conversation with me because of the way I was dressed, simply because of the blazer badge. It had enormous power in propelling us forward when it came to the public consciousness and certainly social interactions in relation to that charity. So it was very, very valuable, a great investment. And yeah, I mean, it still looks good. I think the blazer badge, well made, very modestly priced, it looked very good indeed. Now, when it comes to Bruce's question, I would say definitely put that blazer badge, that crest, on your blazer. Sew it on there and wear it loud and proud, sir. What I would say though is be prepared to be asked many, many questions about it, because blazer badges are so rarely seen these days that they are undoubtedly going to elicit comments, compliments and conversation from the people you encounter just in general life, or maybe in social gatherings. For me, this jacket became the uniform which I wore when I was doing any charitable work for that charity, and it became something which I was proud to wear. Your blazer badge clearly has seen a bit of life. It's a bit frayed around the edges. I would say have no qualms about sewing that on your new blazer. The mix of old and new just exaggerates the sense of heritage and history which that badge has behind it, and I think it makes it all the more attractive because of the fact that it's clearly been worn, loved, and it has importance to you. So don't hesitate, get it on there. Now, if you are a gentleman who has more than one affiliation with more than one charity, there are things that you can do. So for instance, if you had, say for instance, your military badge here, one of the things you can do is to back the badge, use a little tip, with Velcro. You can sew a Velcro patch on the back, sew Velcro on your jacket, and then you can stick the badge on. You can then remove it, and then the next time that you're going to perhaps a different event, you can, of course, change the badge with a different one. So it entirely depends on the situation and, you know, how you wish to wear your badges. You can make them interchangeable, useful for you in different situations with virtually no cost at all. So think about it. If you've got more than one affiliation, you don't have to buy more than one blazer. You just have to invest in a little bit of Velcro. So, Bruce, I hope you found that useful. And I hope it helps you going forward in having the confidence to wear your badge out there proudly in the wider world, in Mexico or Toronto, wherever you ply your trade these days. If you have enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more like this, subscribe. You can support the channel by leaving me a comment. You can drop me an email. You can buy me a coffee. You can even become a patron. I actually make extra videos for my patrons, and I've got quite a personal relationship with those guys who I think of as members of my extended family. And you'll find the links on how to get involved with all that in the show notes below. So until the next time, take care, and I'll see you again very soon.